reward for any information leading to the head of ISIS is now at $25 million. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is the self-proclaimed caliph of ISIS. In 2011, the State Department set the reward for information that led to his location or arrest at $10 million. Since then, he's seemed to stay one step ahead of the US intelligence. That could be because al-Baghdadi is incredibly secretive. Top ISIS leaders communicate with him through handwritten letters or in-person meetings. Even then, he's known to wear face coverings. The push to find al-Baghdadi comes as the US and local forces close in on ISIS, retaking much of Mosul, ISIS' last stronghold in Iraq, and Palmyra in Syria. The US also said in early December it would deploy more troops in the push to retake the Syrian city of Raqqa, the focal point of ISIS territory.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Warren. Rebecca's off today. The war on Christmas in Killeen goes on. The middle school teacher who was forced to take down a holiday sign from her door is taking her case to court. Fox 7's Elizabeth Saab is live from Bell County with that story. Elizabeth.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, Deidre Shannon's lawyer filed a lawsuit against the Killeen ISD here in Bell County. On top of that, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton also filed a lawsuit intervening on behalf of the state of Texas. Now, Mike, Killeen ISD gets out for their winter break tomorrow at noon. So the judge granted an emergency hearing. Shannon's lawyer had asked him to give him a restraining order, allowing Shannon to put that sign back up on her door. Now, here's a recap. On December 5th, Deidre Shannon, a staffer at Patterson Middle School, put a sign up on her door that has a quote from the movie A Charlie Brown Christmas. The principal at Patterson told her to take it down or take out the word Christ. The controversy grew earlier this week when Texas Values Jonathan Saenz signed up to represent Shannon. Saenz and General Paxton sent the school board separate letters clarifying the First Amendment and Texas's Merry Christmas law, which allows students and staffers to extend holiday greetings. Now, the school board voted on Tuesday night 6-1 to have the administration further clarify their winter decorations policy, especially as teachers and staffers around the district had put up Christmas decorations. They also voted to ban the sign. Then the lawsuits were filed. Today, the judge ruled that Ms. Shannon could put the sign back up with the added words, Miss Shannon's Christmas message.
From the beginning, it was clear that the content of the poster that referenced religion was actually targeted by the school. And so we brought that evidence and that concern to the court today, because if you allow people to speak in a public school, if you allow a staff member to put up decorations, as they do in Killeen, but then say that the ones that relate to religion are not allowed, that's a violation of federal law, that's a violation of state law, and that's why I believe we got the victory today that allows the poster to go back up where it belongs.
And the Killeen ISD school district did not respond to our request for comment on the judge's ruling. Lawyers for the district, as they were walking out of court here, they wouldn't talk to us either. Now, as for that lawsuit, Jonathan Saenz says it is still making its way through the legal system, and it will keep going as long as they need to protect Shannon's rights. Back to you.
Austrian police scour train cars and tracks looking for migrant stowaways. They say they're trying to stem the flow of illegal migrants after a man and woman from Eritrea hidden on a train were crushed to death earlier this month. Austria's Tyrol province has been a way station for migrants headed for Western Europe. They've been braving freezing temperatures to hitch a ride across the Alps to Germany. Police spokesman Manfred Dümmer says they're picking up their patrols.
We have observed the phenomenon of illegal migrants coming from Italy trying to continue their journey northwards in this way. Therefore, we have intensified our controls together with Austrian Federal Railways.
Officials say they're trying to prevent another disaster after 71 dead migrants were found locked in a bus in August 2015. But Austria has cracked down hard on illegal immigration, helping to shut down the so-called Balkan route used by refugees fleeing war. That's pushed many of them to take the more perilous journey in flimsy boats across the Mediterranean, where thousands have perished this year alone.
With the liberation of the Syrian city of Aleppo now proclaimed over, civilians are finally getting the chance to start rebuilding their homes and their lives.
When the terrorists were here, the doctors treated only them and never helped civilians.
They gave us food only once a month. They took the rest for themselves.
A few days ago, I was playing here with my friends, and someone threw a rock. It hit a mine, which exploded. Several people were injured, including me. Look at the blood.
Unexploded bombs are all over the eastern districts. So now Syrian and Russian demining teams are clearing the streets. They're removing explosives from numerous schools turned by extremists into weapons factories. Now, before the liberation of the city was proclaimed complete, thousands of rebels had been evacuated from the city in accordance with the agreement with the government. However, on Friday, the terms of the deal were violated. Syria's envoy to the UN told us details.
Unfortunately, the agreement was violated by the terrorist groups who took hostages with them and corpse of any Syrian army soldiers while they were exiting the city and transferring medium caliber weapons after dismantling them. Moreover, the terrorist groups who refused to exit the city because a couple thousand radicals refused to exit, and these radicals are the most radical elements actually among the terrorists. These groups who refused to exit the city have targeted the passage of Al-Ramousi, assigned to the evacuation. This is the main passage assigned to the evacuation of the terrorist groups and their families. So the most radical elements, as I said, targeted the passage of Ramousi with mortar shells and sniper bullets. And they took shots of this firing and attributed it to the Syrian army hitting the civilians as they claimed.
Meanwhile, during a closed meeting at the UN Security Council, officials discussed sending international monitors to Aleppo. The Russian envoy to the UN, Vitaly Churkin, told journalists that organizing such a team could take some time. He also said dialogue needs to return between Damascus and the various fractioned opposition.
What we need to do now is to explore cessation of hostilities regime, try to establish cessation of hostilities regime throughout the country, and to answer the call of Stefan de Mistura, who just a few days ago here said that after Aleppo, what needs to be done is an effort to reconvene serious political discussions between the government and the opposition. And I heard Secretary Kerry say the other day that allegedly the opposition is prepared for those talks. And I hear the Syrian government repeatedly reiterate their readiness to come back to the
United States Navy research drone in international waters rips it out of water and takes it to China in unprecedented act. He initially misspelled unprecedented, deleting that tweet and posting another with the correct spelling. Now, Trump's not the only one responding here. John McCain tweeting, the Chinese Navy seizure of a U.S. unmanned vessel in international waters is a flagrant violation of freedom of the seas. China had no right to seize this vehicle, and the United States must not stand for such outrageous conduct. It comes after Trump has said the one China policy regarding Taiwan is up for negotiation. So these are sensitive times between the two countries. The Chinese did issue a statement. They said that the U.S. is hyping up the drone issue. Then there's the misspelling of the word.
We begin in Indonesia, where a military transport airplane has crashed in the country's easternmost province of Papua, killing all 13 people on board. Authorities say bad weather may have caused the plane to crash in a mountainous area near an airport in the town of Wamena just minutes before its scheduled landing. The plane departed from the city of Timika, some 200 kilometers from its destination, and had been carrying 12 tons of food supplies and cement.
It has been over a month since the U.S. election, but it seems some Democrats are refusing to admit defeat to President-elect Donald Trump. His opponents have tried many tactics to overturn the result, from blaming the FBI to demanding a recount. RT's correspondent Caleb Mopan reports.
Obama seemed so cheerful and supportive back in November. My team stands ready to accelerate in the next steps that are required to ensure a smooth transition.
So how exactly have the Democrats been preparing for the Oval Office to change hands? Let's review the last month or so, shall we? First, there was explosive panic and racial vitriol.
I'm hearing about a nightmare. They're afraid of how do I explain this to my children? This was a white lash.
And then the streets filled with protests. Then there were recounts, just in case the original total hadn't been accurate. And then there were calls to scrap the results anyhow, because Clinton had won the popular vote, so who cares how those hillbillies in Ohio voted anyway? And then they decided to blame the Bureau and pitch a fit at the FBI.
I wrote in August, and the FBI director didn't have the decency, the courtesy to even respond to my letter.
Some folks started thinking that it seemed like rigging the elections was too big of a task for a single renegade federal agency. So the story shifted. Suddenly, Hillary Clinton's loss was the result of the personal, diabolical efforts of one man, whose first name happened to be Vladimir.
There's no question that Russia has a very robust system of putting out fake news and other types of propaganda.
Scores of Yemeni soldiers were killed in the blast triggered by a suicide bomber in Aden in the south of the country. The attacker is thought to have hidden himself among soldiers who'd gathered at a military base to collect their wages. This comes a week after Islamic State attackers killed 50 troops at a nearby military base in another suicide attack. Aden is the temporary capital for the country's government in exile, who are currently in Saudi Arabia. Along with international partners, Riyadh has been carrying out airstrikes on Yemen in an attempt to dislodge Houthi rebels from the capital after they drove the government out in March 2015. Meanwhile, extremist militants from groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State organization have taken advantage of the power vacuum in Yemen to further destabilize the situation through a spate of assassinations and bombings. However, Al-Qaeda distanced itself from the suicide bombing on December the 10th, saying that the organization would rather target the US and its allies rather than spill Muslim blood.
A 3-year-old boy was shot and killed in Little Rock, Arkansas because someone thought his grandma wasn't moving fast enough at a stop sign. After the incident, the grandmother pulled over at a shopping center and immediately called the police. The boy was taken to the hospital and passed away. The perpetrator was driving a black Chevrolet Impala, and the grandmother described him as a tall black man.
Authorities in Berlin say they've arrested this man. He's suspected of kicking a woman down a flight of stairs at an underground station in the capital. The assault, caught on CCTV, happened in October, but police released the clip last week in an effort to identify the perpetrator. A 27-year-old man who's said to be from Bulgaria has since been detained. The seemingly casual brutality of the incident caused public outcry, and some people offered rewards for information on the suspect. The victim was hospitalized with a broken arm following the attack.
Matilda Wilson comes to this cemetery to visit a carefully tended gravestone in memory of her daughter. Ramona Wilson disappeared 22 years ago, not long after graduating from high school. Her body was found 10 months later, but her case, like so many up here, remains unsolved.
That's what really puts a mother down, is that you don't know how long she was alive before they killed her. That's the most difficult part.
The first disappearances along the Highway of Tears were nearly 50 years ago, but Canadian Federal Police didn't set up a major investigation until 2005. We asked the police for an interview, but they turned us down.
I don't think Canadians...
This ex-policeman runs his own private investigation along the highway. His former colleagues, he says, have spent too much time looking for serial killers.
I think that would show that they focused on cases that they thought, or where they thought a serial killer may have been involved, and once they determined that a case didn't involve a serial killer, it got put aside, like it's been put aside for 30 years.
All along or near this remote stretch of road, dozens of women have been murdered or gone missing, their bodies never found in some cases.
It's a problem that's reflected across the country and one that Canadian society is only beginning to deal with.
Late last year, a nationwide inquiry into missing and murdered Aboriginal women, potentially thousands of cases, was called by the federal government. The inquiry began its 2-year mandate last September.
We are citizens of your community.
Ramona Wilson's sister Brenda is head of an activist group, Highway of Tears Initiative. She says the inquiry is a good start, but must do more than hold hearings and write reports.
Sure, you're going to take your time and do this, national inquiry, but is it going to be followed through? Is it going to be complete? Are we really going to get something out of it?
A Highway of Tears is a challenge that Canada's justice system has so far failed to meet. One of many across the country where Indigenous people say their needs, concerns, and their safety are not being taken seriously. Daniel Lack, Al Jazeera, near Smithers, British Columbia.